They forced me to sign loans. I cancelled $75,000 in debt. Imagine your own children using you as an ATM. I woke up one day to find my signature on loan documents for $75,000. They thought I'd never find out. But not only did I find out, I got even in a way no one expected. I arrived at my children's house in the New Jersey suburbs late on a Saturday morning. A cool October wind was blowing outside, and maple leaves, shimmering red and gold, fell softly onto the porch. I was carrying a few papers. I wanted to discuss my finances with them, to make sure everything was in order with my bank accounts, loans, and insurance payments. It seemed like an ordinary visit from a caring mother. My daughter Liz opened the door, her smile seeming forced. "Mom, it's just paperwork, don't worry," she said too quickly, as if trying to drown out my presence. But something in her voice made me pause in the hallway, feeling a slight chill of anxiety. I followed her into the living room. Documents were already lying on the table. I glanced at them and immediately felt a strange lump in my chest. The papers were bank loan agreements, and on each one was my signature. My name was there, where consent for huge loans, $75,000, should have been. "What is this?" My voice trembled. "Liz, why is my signature here? I never signed anything." She shrugged nervously and smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes at all. "Mom, it's just formalities. We thought you'd agree. We just wanted to help ourselves with our debts. Don't worry." I froze, as if turned to ice. My gaze darted around the room, trying to find some sign that this was a joke. But no, the documents lay on the table, the cold print of the agreements leaving no room for doubt. "Have you lost your minds?" I burst out. "Did you just take it upon yourselves to sign my name?" Liz lowered her eyes, and I saw her hands trembling. "Mom, we just didn't know how else. We needed the money urgently." "You didn't know?" I sharply drew in a breath. "You used me as a credit tool. Do you realize this is illegal? That you've set up your own mother, the one who worked hard for you all her life?" For a moment, silence fell in the room, broken only by the quiet hum of the refrigerator. My heart was pounding. My fingers involuntarily clenched my bag and papers, and I felt an inner tremor growing, a mixture of shock, betrayal, and anger. I couldn't believe that my own children, whom I had raised with love, had decided to do this. "But Mom, we thought you'd understand," Liz tried to justify herself. "We were going to pay it all back, honestly." "Pay it back?" I laughed through tears. "Do you understand how much that is? $75,000. And you didn't even think to ask me. You just signed my name and decided it was okay." My gaze fell on the photographs on the mantelpiece. They showed me with the children, happy, smiling. And now that picture seemed alien to me. I felt a sharp, almost physical pain of betrayal, as if a knife had been plunged into my chest. I sat down on the sofa, holding my head in my hands, and thought, how could they? I raised them. I trusted them. I noticed Liz still standing opposite me, nervously fiddling with the edge of her cardigan. "Mom, please, don't be so angry." "Don't be angry," I repeated, trying to pull myself together. "Liz, I feel deceived, used. This isn't anger, it's betrayal. You made a choice without me, you crossed a line. And now I have to figure out, how do I protect myself?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking at the autumn trees that seemed calm and peaceful, while my life had been turned upside down. Every cell in my body demanded action, but at the same time, I felt confusion. What to do? Where to run from this injustice? My mind raced between anger, hurt, and a quiet but unwavering resolve. I would not let these children destroy my life. I don't know what to do," I said to myself in a whisper, but already feeling an idea of a fight, a plan of action, growing inside me. "But I will find a way, and they will pay for this, morally, if nothing else." And in that moment, I understood that the visit to their house had become more than just a conversation about finances. It was the beginning of a battle for my freedom, my money, and my dignity. After discovering the loans, I felt as if I were trapped. My heart was pounding, my breathing became ragged, but I decided not to make any sudden moves right away. Maybe I should just leave everything as it is, I thought, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of now cold coffee. I still hoped the children would come to their senses and return the money voluntarily, that it was all just a misunderstanding. On the surface, it seemed the situation could be justified. The loans were supposedly taken out for urgent expenses. I thought they had taken the money to pay for education or an emergency home repair. But the longer I scrutinized the documents and bank statements, the more my anxiety grew. Something didn't add up. And then I accidentally noticed on one of the account pages an expensive payment that couldn't possibly relate to urgent needs. The amount, $55,000 for a car they had apparently bought for themselves. At first, I couldn't believe my eyes. Is this a joke? They took out money for a new SUV. I mentally screamed. At first, I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of the situation, but the laughter quickly turned into a storm of anger. I could have afforded to spend that money if I had wanted to. I never had problems with loans. I always managed my finances to live comfortably and without need. But that's precisely what angered me, the children's audacity and shamelessness. They didn't ask, they didn't explain, they just used me as if I were an ATM. I tried to stay calm. I sat down at the table, spread out the documents, and called my daughter. Liz, we need to have a serious talk. I've seen all the documents. I want you to return the money, I said softly, trying to keep my voice level. Liz immediately became nervous. Mom, we thought you'd understand. We were going to pay it all back. Pay it back, I repeated, struggling to contain my irritation. You bought a car for $55,000. That's not a necessity. It's a want. And you didn't even think to ask me. Then her husband, Tony, joined the conversation, and it instantly turned into an argument. She's exaggerating everything, Liz, calm down, he said, trying to step between us. Stop it, I shouted. I don't want you ignoring me. You made a choice without me, and it's illegal. The conversation dragged on, the tension mounting. They tried to convince me that nothing terrible had happened, that I shouldn't overreact. But my nerves were frayed. I felt a storm brewing inside me, hurt, betrayal, anger, all mixed into a single concoction that tightened my chest. At some point, I realized, a peaceful resolution was impossible. The children weren't even listening. They didn't want to admit their mistake. My inner voice told me, you need to act. You need to protect yourself. I took a deep breath, realizing there was only one solution, to contact a professional. The next day, I called a lawyer and scheduled an appointment. As I wrote down the number and name on a piece of paper, a strange wave of relief washed over me. Finally, there was a plan, an action that could return control of the situation to me. I already knew it wouldn't be easy, that a dispute, perhaps even a court case, lay ahead, but I was ready. I understood I couldn't manage this alone. The following day, I met with the lawyer, an older man named Mr. Harrison, who had once handled major banking cases. His calmness and confidence immediately gave me strength. We went through all the documents. The loans, the bank statements, the correspondence. Mr. Harrison carefully explained which laws had been broken and what evidence we needed to gather to have the loans annulled. Over the next week, I began secretly reviewing the children's bank statements and emails. My eyes fell on an email where Tony was discussing the terms of purchasing a new SUV with a dealer and planning for delivery the following week. I couldn't believe it. They had taken the money not for urgent needs, but for luxury purchases. A mix of anger and relief boiled inside me. Now I had solid proof that the loans were used illegally. But the tension at home didn't subside. Liz tried to meet with me in person to persuade me to sign yet another loan for their needs. Mom, it's urgent. We'll explain everything. Just sign, and everything will be fine, she said, holding a ready-made packet of documents. I looked at them and felt a fire igniting within me. Their audacity was beyond the pale, and their indifference to my well-being, to my life, was deeply insulting. I sat back down on the sofa, clutching the documents in my hands, and felt my resolve growing. I could no longer just sit and wait for them to decide what to do with me. And then, in the moment they were again insisting I sign, I heard a notification sound from their room. Tony had forgotten to close his laptop. I couldn't resist and glanced at the screen. There was a list of all the credit card transactions, and next to it, audio recordings of their conversations where they discussed buying the car and celebrating an expensive weekend in Miami. My heart beat faster. The evidence was laid out before me on a silver platter. I felt anger mixing with triumph. I not only knew what they had spent the money on, but I now had proof that the loans were obtained illegally. Every word they spoke, every email, had become a weapon in my future victory. That evening, after the children had left for work, I met with Mr. Harrison again. We discussed the strategy: filing a lawsuit, presenting evidence of fraud and forged signatures, and the possibility of temporarily freezing the loans. I felt strong and ready to act. Their attempts to force me to sign another loan only fueled the inner fire. Do you think I'll just give up? I thought, closing my eyes to the noise of the street outside. They've overestimated my tolerance. They have no idea that I will outmaneuver them. Now I had the complete picture. The children's audacity, their attempts at manipulation, the real evidence, and a plan of action. For the first time in many days, I felt that control over the situation was returning to me. And this moment was the first step toward justice, toward them finally learning a lesson, and toward me reclaiming my money and my dignity. A few weeks after I met with the lawyer, everything started unfolding like a movie. The children received a court summons. I remember the moment Liz started calling me incessantly. Her voice trembled, sounding almost panicked. "Mom, please, can we talk about this? You're not really going to file this, are you?" I looked at my phone screen and smiled faintly. "No, Liz. It will be as the law decides," I said quietly and pressed the block button. Their calls came one after another, but each time my finger pressed the button like a small triumph. Now I felt that control over the situation had finally returned to me. Not a day had passed before Tony, Liz's husband, showed up at my house. He stood on the doorstep, trying to look imposing. "You have no idea who you're dealing with or what you're doing. Mom, think again," he said, almost threateningly. I took a deep breath, showing no fear, and calmly replied, "I've already thought it through, Tony. And if you continue with the threats, I will call the police." He froze for a moment, as if he hadn't expected such resolve. I immediately dialed 911 and reported the disturbance. Within minutes, a police officer was at my door, and Tony, realizing the game was over, left without another word. The day of the court hearing arrived. I stood in the courtroom with Mr. Harrison, watching my children enter, trying to hide their embarrassment and fear. As soon as the proceedings began, they started shouting and protesting. "It's not true. She's exaggerating everything. You raised me, Mom." Liz was crying, and Tony was threatening the lawyers and the judge. But I held my ground. I sat up straight, folded my hands in my lap, and looked directly at them. Mr. Harrison presented all the evidence: audio recordings, letters, bank statements, documents proving the forged signatures. Each piece of evidence was backed by precise legal references. Every point was irrefutable. The judge listened carefully to both sides, but the clear, documented evidence left no room for doubt. I watched as the children's faces shifted from proud arrogance to shock and shame. They hadn't expected me to be so thoroughly and thoughtfully prepared. When the judge delivered the verdict, I felt my heart fill with triumph. All the loans were annulled, and on top of that, I was awarded compensation for moral damages. The children received suspended sentences, a lesson, I hope, they will never forget. After the hearing, I approached Liz, who stood with her head bowed, unable to look me in the eye. I said quietly but firmly, "This is not how I raised you." Her eyes filled with tears, and I felt a strange relief. The victory was not only material but also moral. I had defended my rights, my dignity, and shown that even betrayal by the closest of kin cannot break someone who is ready to act and protect themselves. As I walked down the courthouse corridor, a sense of triumph overwhelmed me. The silence, the attention of passers-by, the respectful nod from my lawyer, it all made the moment particularly poignant. I knew. This was my day, my victory. Injustice had been proven, audacity punished, and now I was free. In the car on the way home, I sat back, closed my eyes, and smiled quietly. My hands trembled with excitement, but inside, there was silence and satisfaction. This is the end of one chapter, I thought. But the lesson for them will last forever. Several years have passed since I won my victory in court. Time heals, they say, but my days were increasingly filled with a quiet emptiness. I had won the battle, defended my rights, reclaimed my money and the compensation I deserved. I had managed to prove the injustice and punish those who had violated the boundaries of trust. On paper, I was the victor. But inside remained the shadow of the hole left by the devotion and love for my children that I had once given so selflessly. I kept waiting for Liz to reach out on her own. For her to come, lower her eyes and say quietly, "Mom, forgive me. I understand now." I dreamed of the day when we could sit at the table again, like before, and talk honestly, without deception or threats. I imagined trust gradually being restored and my heart filling with warmth once more. But the years went by, and the phone remained silent. No letters arrived. I tried myself, wrote several emails, sent cards to an address I thought might still be current. There was no reply. At first, I tried to remain patient, hoping she needed time, that she would come to realize her mistakes on her own. But gradually, I understood. The connection was severed for good. It turned out Liz had moved to another state without even notifying me. She had simply left my life as if I were a stranger. I felt pain and disappointment, but along with it came the understanding. This was her choice. She had created the distance herself, and now all I could do was accept it. I thought about how the victory over injustice had been sweet, but it had left an emptiness inside me. I had won the money, restored my rights, punished the children morally and financially, and it was all justified. But on those quiet evenings, as the sun set outside my apartment window, I caught myself thinking, did I go too far? Maybe, in fighting for justice, I had drawn the line too harshly, cutting off the path to the reconciliation I had so longed for? These thoughts weighed on me, forcing me to re-examine the past again and again. I asked myself thousands of questions. Should I have acted differently? Could I have found a middle ground between truth and forgiveness? Was it necessary to be so firm? There were no answers. Only a feeling of inner strength and, simultaneously, loneliness. Now I live alone. The evenings are quiet, the days pass steadily. I keep busy with my own affairs, but the emptiness feels sharper than ever. Sometimes I see Liz in my dreams. She smiles, and I feel the old wounds healing slightly, but I wake up with a heaviness in my chest. Reality is cruel. The victory I achieved in court turned out to be only part of the story. The hardest part is preserving love, even when the other person rejects it. I started trying to find her through mutual acquaintances and friends. Calls, letters, questions, cautious hints, all to understand where she is, what she's doing, if she's living happily. And though I know I might face resentment or refusal, an inner voice whispers, try. Maybe there's a chance to restore at least a thread of connection. I often think that people might see victory as the end of a story. But in reality, it only opens new questions. What does true justice mean? What is more important? Punishment for the past, or the possibility of rebuilding a relationship? And now I want to ask you, readers, what would you have done in my place? Was it worth trying to re-establish contact after all that happened? Or is it better to leave the past behind and live your own life, preserving the victory and your dignity? Sometimes I catch myself writing these thoughts down, as if hoping someone will hear me and show me the way. Because victory without love and trust leaves a strange aftertaste, sweet and bitter at the same time. And yet I know, I acted as I thought was right. I protected myself, my rights, and my dignity. And even if my daughter chose the path of alienation, that is her decision. But now I am searching for a way to restore at least a thread of connection, because a mother's heart cannot completely let go of the one she raised with love. And yet I smile, even through the pain. I defeated injustice. I am strong. But will I be able to conquer the silence that my daughter left behind? If you enjoyed following one woman's journey to defend her rights and seek justice within her own family, subscribe to hear more real stories from Reddit. Authentic, shocking, dramatic, and profoundly human.